Hello and welcome everyone. Today we will begin with a new philosophical topic from the book Lectures on Homeopathic Philosophy by Dr. James Tyler Kent. Chapter number 35, Prognosis after observing the action of the remedy. It is also known as Kent's 12 observation, but this is its nickname. This is the nickname of this chapter, which is very famous among us. But my point is, in order to understand, in order to learn this chapter, these observations, first let us learn the original name of this chapter. Let us call this chapter by its original name. Otherwise, Kant could have done it. He could have named it My 12 Observations, Kant's 12 Observations, but no. Kent has given a specific name to this chapter. And it is very important because each and every word of the original name has its own significance. So let's begin. In introduction, we learn about something about prognosis, the first name of this chapter, the first word from the name of this chapter, prognosis. It is a prediction made. Now look. The line says, the definition says that prognosis is a prediction. It is a prediction made. Like you predict. When you can predict, if you have to make a prediction about the course of a disease, about the fate of the sickness of a patient, when can you predict it, a thing like that? Only after observing the action of the medicine which you have given to him. So what it says, it is a prediction made on the course of disease, either good, either bad. The course of disease could be good, could be bad. It is only be known to you by observing the action of the given medicine in that case. Before that, you cannot predict, you cannot make a prognosis that this patient is on a right track, or this patient is on a wrong track. Either this patient is doing good, or this patient is not doing good, or doing bad. So, when can we make a prognosis? When can we predict about the course of disease, about the fate of a patient? कि ये ठीक हो जाएगा, सही रास्ते पे है कि नहीं है? After the observation of the action of a given medicine. Let's move further. And what is the source of these observations? अब ऐसा तो नहीं है कि कैंट सिर्फ अकेले ऐसे पर्सन थे जिन्होंने इस ऑब्जर्वेशन को देखा, पढ़ा और उन्होंने लिख दिया सब. कहीं ना कहीं से तो उनको भी इंस्पिरेशन मिली होगी, कहीं ना कहीं से तो उन्होंने भी ये चीजें इंफॉर्मेशन उठाई होगी. तो इसका सोर्स क्या है? ओरिजिनल सोर्स बिल्कुल वही है जिसको हम नेग्लेक्ट कर देते हैं, जो हमारा होम्योपैथी का बाइबल, कुरान, ग्रंथ साहिब, गीता सब है. That is organ of medicine. The source of these observation is organ of medicine. Hahnemann has mentioned many these observation in hints in his textbook of organ of medicine. But for that, we have to refer organ, and it is a very detailed topic. We will discuss in some other video someday. Now, why to learn and understand these observations? It is a very important question, because when you are doing your early years of BHMS, you think that this chapter is very theoretical. It is not up to it is not very practical. So I think that I should not learn or understand it in depth, because it is it could be only utilized in your examinations or whatever, but it is not. Until and unless you understand these observations, you cannot make a second prescription in your clinic. If you do not understand the significance of this chapter, if you do not understand these observations by heart, you cannot make a second prescription, and it will make a big challenge in your prescribing. because एक टाइम के बाद at some point you will be in that position कि आपको समझ नहीं आएगा कि ऐसा मुझे मिल रहा है, पेशेंट ऐसे बता रहा है मुझे, ऐसे उसके सिम्टम्स जा रहे हैं, बट व्हाट टू डू? only by learning and understanding these observations, a physician can only make a second prescription justifiable, rational, and in a more confident way. If you do not understand this, you cannot make a confident second prescription. So let's move ahead. Observation 1. It says that a prolonged aggravation and final decline of the patient. So, and this the aggravation is very prolonged for a very long time. And after that prolonged aggravation, after that long agony, suffering of the patient finally declines. His health deteriorates. Vitality declines. So, if you read the first observation from the philosophy, from the Kant's philosophy, from the book of Kant philosophy, there Kant gave you an example that a patient which is suffering from a phthisis or tuberculosis comes to the doctor takes his case, analyze it, and prescribe a antisoric. There he writes, he prescribed an antisoric, or we can say that he prescribed him XYZ medicine to that patient who is suffering from tuberculosis. After prescribing that medicine, after giving that medicine, in the further follow-ups, the physician observed that the patient's symptoms are getting more worse, are aggravated. But that physician is still hopeful because it is a good thing. It is said to be a good thing that after giving a medicine in homeopathy, if the symptoms are slightly getting aggravated, or if the symptoms are aggravating, it could be a good sign because initially ऐसा एक trend सा है कि शुरू में symptom बढ़ेगा. So the physician was hopeful in the first case, and he waits. And in further follow-ups, he sees that the symptoms of the patient is getting more worse. His cough is getting more worse in more paroxysms. His sputum quantity is increased. The discharge color is turning into reddish tone. The weakness which is there, but it is now very marked. Eyes are sunken, cheeks are sunken, appetite has been gone. And finally, the patient is bedridden. And he is not able to visit even your clinic. So after that prolonged suffering, prolonged aggravation of his symptoms, the patient's vitality finally gives up. The patient finally declines. So this is a case study, and in the book it is written tuberculosis, but you can imagine a case of malignancy or chronic renal failure or a liver failure or a heart failure, in which there is marked pathology, where there is metastasis, where there is infiltration of alveoli with fluid, and the alveoli loses its compatibility and flexibility in the cases of emphysema, that the bronchioles are permanently dilated. The pathology is very marked. It is not reversible. It cannot be reversed. There you have prescribed a medicine. Kant has said antisoric medicine. I am saying a medicine, and you observe a lot of aggravation, for a very long time, prolonged time, and finally the patient declines. The patient health is getting deteriorated, worse. There you find in this type of cases where pathology is very marked, vital organs are involved, there is pathology which is irreversible, there is metastasis, there is damage to a particular organ. Instead of particular, there is vital organ, damage to a vital organ. In these cases, you could see this kind of aggravation. So, what after getting to know all these reaction by the patient in the form of sign and symptoms, after getting to know the action of your medicine which you have given, get to know the prognosis, because now you can predict that this case is unfavorable, prognosis is bad. So your medicine and potency selection has been drastically wrong, because that case is not a curable case from the day one, and you have selected a very deep acting medicine in a very not suitable potency. And that medicine, instead of making patient doing better, instead of doing some good to the patient, it has done a very bad. It has shaken his leftover vitality. And now the patient finally, after prolonged aggravation, declines. So what we can do, what you can do in such kind of cases? First, keep your potency of your selected medicines low. I said that your medicine selection is wrong, but your potency selection is also very wrong. So keep your potency low. According to JT Kent, keep your potency low, 12, 30. And try some organ specific medicines. Like if there is involvement of kidneys, if there is involvement of liver. So there are some clinical repertories, some materia medicas, which are organ specific. In such incurable cases, in such cases where there is so marked pathology, there is metastasis, end-stage diseases, terminal illnesses, you can think of some organ-specific medicine, because ultimately you have to give relief to your patient in the form of palliation, because the cure is not possible in this kind of cases, but there is so marked irreversible pathology, because the damage has been already done. And if you optimistically, enthusiastically try to select a constitutional medicine, a deep acting medicine, in order to make patient feel good, in order to hope that this case might be get better, you will accidentally or neglectingly may harm your patient, may harm the case. So first thing you have to remind is, make a proper analysis of the case. Study the pathological reports of the patient. Make a clinical examination. Look for all the red flags in clinical examination, in clinical signs. Look for all the alarming symptoms. Get it confirmed with the pathological reports, and assess the current state of the patient. And after analyzing all of it, then you should always try to correlate homeopathically, like case taking homeopathically, that what can be done in such cases. And if you find these kind of pathologies, so you do not make a mistake in these kind of cases. The Kent has given his experience in such cases, that you should not make the same mistake which has Kent made. So he found that in such cases, I got this observation. It is a totally havoc and devastating. So you do not make such mistakes. That is why Kent has mentioned in his first observation that you should always always give the potency low with a minimum dose, and do not select very deep acting medicines, and do not frequent repeatedly, unjudiciously, and try to give some organ specific medicines which is superficial or partial inacting, and do not give high potencies of that medicines too. And what can be done in these cases? Only palliation. The palliation is the only way, only method in these kind of cases. Okay. Now observation 2. Now first observation says that a prolonged aggravation and final decline of the patient. Observation 2 says that the aggravation is long, the long aggravation. Okay. But here he mentions but final and slow improvement. For example, you come across such cases where the vital organs are not very much damaged, are not involved particularly. There is pathology, but not in the vital organs like heart, lungs, liver, kidney. But there is pathologies, but vital organs are not compromised. In these kind of cases, you see that the aggravation of the patient, of the symptoms of the patient is long, लंबा जा रहा है aggravation, but finally patient react करता है, but finally patient shows a sign that his vitality is still intact, that we can make this patient better to some extent, that this case is not totally incurable. So for example, let's example from the first case of Ken that he is suffering from already tuberculosis. There is infiltration or fibrosis of alveoli has been there. So there is permanent damage to the tissue, or there is necrosis. So there is permanent damage, cell death. You cannot reverse it. Okay. In such cases, you find that aggravation is prolonged and final decline. But in the beginning of structural changes in vital organs, in the beginning, mark, this is important, beginning, just beginning, or vital organs are not compromised. So what is our interpretation in such cases? That further deterioration of vitality can be prevented. There is still some hope left, still some vitality left in this patient, in this person. So prognosis is favorable. You can hope for good. You can do some good in these cases. Now, what is your observation of the medicine you have selected and potency you have selected in these cases? Because the reaction is like that. The aggravation is long, but patient has shown finally some improvement. So medicine selection is right. That is why the patient have reacted. But the potency is not appropriate. The potency is slightly higher than the required. That is why there is so long aggravation. If the potency and medicine has been optimum, then we do not see such kind of long aggravations in these cases also. What can be done? What action you take? Okay, so I have written action like wait and watch, but this topic is for second prescription. After explanation, the case study, interpretation, prognosis, medicine and potency selection talk, I have written action like what to do. Now what is to be done after observing कि ये सब पूछ लिया, observe कर लिया follow ups में. Now what can be done? What is to be done? This is the part of second prescription. That is why we do not discuss here in detail of all the actions of all the upcoming observations in this lecture. So that is why Kent has written second prescription just after the chapter 35. of this observation, because after understanding this observation, which I have told you in the starting of this video, that before you do not understand these observations, you cannot make a second prescription. And what needs to be done is written in this chapter, in the lecture of second prescription. So let's move further. Observation 3. It says that aggravation is quick, short, and strong with rapid improvement. This is the one of the favorite observations of our clinicians, of all the physicians, because we also want such kind of aggravations in all cases, because this aggravation, these observation is very promising. Why? Because it is nothing but a definition of homeopathic aggravation. Like in homeopathic aggravation, you give a medicine and the patients, that there is slight sharp aggravation of the symptoms, and then immediately the patient begins to improve. So let's see the patient. You see a case, and this observation can only be seen in this kind of cases where there is very minimal structural changes, that too in non-vital parts, or there is superficial inflammation. For example, you come across with a case of tonsillitis, sinusitis, rhinitis, or any superficial, there is boil, there is furuncle. So you gave a medicine and the patient calls you after returning to home, doctor, the pain, doctor, the coryza, doctor, the throat pain, doctor, my cough, which is due to tickling in throat, gets aggravated, doctor, मैं क्या करूं? Then you think that अभी तो दवाई दिया है, and patient is saying that जैसे दवाई खाया, घर में पहुंचा हूं, 15-20 मिनट हुए हैं, आधा घंटा हुआ है, and my symptoms is aggravated from before. But after some initial hours, after 1, 2, 3 hours, then you tell the patient that, okay, repeat the placebo which I have given to you. Obviously, you do not tell him that you have given him placebo, but repeat the medicine which I have given to you in the next bottle, and tell me after 3 hours or 4 hours or in the evening or by the evening. So by the evening, the patient calls you and says, doctor, I'm fine. After I drop your call, मुझे नींद आ गई थी. I slept and I slept for 3 hours, and अभी जब मैं उठा हूं, then I'm fine. So these aggravation are your favorite. But ये मैंने भी बात करी acute case. In chronic cases, you might not get these aggravation for 1 hour or 2 hours, but for initial days, for 1 day, 2 days, the symptom of the patient will say after the end of 1 week that initial 2 days my symptoms are getting worse, slightly aggravating, but after 2 days I generally feel so much better. So it is somewhat related to homeopathic aggravation, but in homeopathic aggravation there is a difference that although the symptoms of the patient is slightly aggravated, but patient is still feeling better as a whole. What does it mean? कि patient की जो दिक्कत थी, जो patient लेके आया, patient की दिक्कत बढ़ रही है, उसको लग रहा है कि मुझे मेरी दिक्कत जो खांसी है, जुकाम है, वो बढ़ गया है, but अंदर से उसको एक sense of relief, अंदर से एक मन की शांति उसको मिल गई है. Although the symptom of the patient has aggravated, but he feels so much better in inside. Like when he comes to you, when he came in your clinic with the complaint of tonsillitis, of rhinitis, cough, or conjunctivitis, he's very anxious. He was very anxious. He was very restless. After taking the medicine, his restlessness soothes, his anxiousness gets better. He becomes more calm. His conjunctivitis slightly aggravated, his cough got aggravated slightly, but after some hours, the patient feels so much better. And that is this observation, that aggravation is quick. But what I was telling is that is homeopathic aggravation. The patient is feeling better, although the symptom is aggravating. A patient as a whole, in general, is feeling so much better from before. He is in peace within. But superficially, it is reflecting that his symptom is aggravated or is getting worse. That is homeopathic aggravation. And what is this observation? That is aggravation is quick, short, and strong with rapid improvement. The improvement should be rapid. So in any case where you see that aggravation is very quick, but it is for very short duration. In acute cases, the short duration could be 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour. In chronic cases, it could be one day, 2 day, 3 days, or depend, or it can depend. But with rapid improvement of the case, with the rapid improvement following the disappearance of all the troubling symptoms of the patient. So what is your interpretation? That very minimal structural changes are there, and that too in non-vital parts, or there are superficial inflammations. So the prognosis is very good. This case is very, very favorable. Okay. Medicine and potency selection. Medicine is very accurate, but the potency is slightly high than required. Very slightly high. Otherwise, the aggravation is not so quick and short. Not very quick, short and strong. अब ऐसा मैं क्यों बोल रहा हूँ? ऐसा वो next observation में आएगा. So action, wait and no interference is to be done, but it is to be discussed in the second prescription. What it needs to be done, or what happens if this happens, then what needs to be done. Okay. Then comes the fourth observation. That is no and minimal aggravation. In the book, it is written that no aggravation, but it is not the case always. You always notice some slight aggravation in every case. It might not be traceable to you or to the patient, but there is still some aggravation, which is so minimal, so less traceable that you cannot observe it, or the patient बोलेगा मुझे तो पता नहीं चला, बस दवाई खाया और मैं ठीक. But still हम यही एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं मेडिसिन देने के बाद कि कुछ पेशेंट को थोड़ा दिक्कत पहले वो बोले कि कुछ बड़ा है, कुछ ऐसा थोड़ी दिक्कत बड़ी फिर एकदम कम हुई, तो वो हमारी बहुत फेवरेट ऑब्जर्वेशन है, बिकॉज उसमें हमें शॉर्ट है. नाउ द पेशेंट विल इंप्रूव. ये केस अब निकलेगा ही निकलेगा, अब इसको रोक नहीं सकता कोई. सो फोर्थ ऑब्जर्वेशन गोज बाय नो, और आई थिंक इसको और अच्छे से लिखना है तो मिनिमल जरूर हमें ऐड करना है इसमें, बिकॉज ये इसको और जस्टिफाई करता है इस ऑब्जर्वेशन को. बिकॉज देयर इज no such thing which is ideal in this world. It is a very ideal observation. Observation number 4, very, very ideal observation, but nothing is ideal because we are already influenced by environmental factors, social factor, emotional factors. So we are not living in an ideal situation. That is why we could not get an ideal observation in every case. It is a very rare observation. Okay. So no or minimal aggravation with recovery of the patient.